All right, everyone, welcome to Teach Me in 10. I'm excited. Today we have Michael Roberts joining us today. And Michael, nice to have you on the show, man. Thanks for being
Yeah,
willing to
great to
join.
be here. Thanks for having me.
For sure, for sure. So Michael and I, in full disclosure, we've never met, but we just bonded because he's from Pleasant Grove or grew up in Pleasant Grove, which is also where I grew up. He's also wearing the right team color, University of Utah. So we're fast friends as a
Hitting it
result of
off,
that.
that's for sure.
That's right. We're starting things off right for sure. I've heard, just to give Michael a little bit of a plug, yeah, we've never met in real life, but I've heard lots of good things about him. My business partner, Gavin Tanner, actually connected us, and I've heard nothing but good things about Michael I guess he does a lot of email marketing, lifecycle marketing, and his name's come up a few times actually. So I'm excited to get a chance to talk to Michael today. Michael, tell our friends that are listening a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so a lot of people see the instruments behind me, but my name is Michael Roberts. I do a lot of I've got a lot of interests, but for the purpose of this call, my focus is email marketing. I'm a contractor and consultant, so I brand myself as a fractional resource, particularly for SaaS and B2B clients. I play really well in PLG motions because there's so much to do there around activation and lifecycle. So that's really my bread and butter work, being in like product growth and the role in email and sometimes in product notifications, and pushing users to use a product, convert to revenue, and then not churn. Uh, there's a lot underneath that, but that's my focus.
Love it. Very cool. Yeah, looking forward to the conversation today. There's a couple things that are on marketers' minds. I hear a lot. And one of those is there's a lot of hype around AI. There's a lot of conversations that are going on in terms of what you should and shouldn't be doing and how it's actually being used. So I'm excited today. Michael's going to share some practical applications of how marketers can actually use AI. So, Michael, what are you going to teach us today?
Yeah, so my focus is email personalization. There's a bit of it out there, folks using stuff like Clay to personalize the sales outreach. Mine is more focused on the marketing content side. And so I think there's a big world there as I pull up my screen that most people aren't really talking about. So let's get out of this.
Got the infinite loop going on
The
there.
infinite loop going
Yep.
on here.
Yep.
Um, all right. So this is work that I've been doing for the past 8 months or so, trying to figure out because there is a lot of talk around AI, and in most of the use cases that I've come across so far, I'm underwhelmed. Probably primarily because they're either used for content generation or research. And those are okay, certainly time savers, but they're pretty straightforward use cases, stuff that we were already doing, and they're easy to figure out, and so everybody's already doing them. So in terms of like incremental impact and how it's going to affect your work, you're not probably getting much. You need to do it because you get left behind, but you're not like jumping ahead. So at the beginning of the year, I kind of put it on myself as I was testing some AI products. I was blown away with the fact that like I was running into products where products themselves were almost like dynamically being created as I use them based on the stuff that I needed to do. And there was a bit of shame involved with that like if engineers were able to build amazing stuff like that with products that I use, why couldn't I do the same thing with content, particularly with email? And email is uniquely positioned to do that kind of work because you have a lot more control and data on the individual person that you're pushing that content to. Um, and nobody seemed to be talking about it. And personalization is not a new thing, right? But it has largely come in the two forms. One where you merge fields into an email. Yes, so like first name or company name. And then the other is you group like customers into segments, and then you create separate emails or content pieces based on the group that they participate in. I wanted to get to a world where every individual email, was uniquely crafted for the contact that I was sending to. So, um, in the nuts and bolts, here's how it works, right? I have data within my marketing automation tool. I would need to send that to AI somehow. And what I'll show you is with how to do that through an API. So that I could almost have what you would think of as a chat conversation with ChatGPT, right? Because I have data, whether it's structured or unstructured, and I want to craft content based on that data. And I can do that as if I was using a chat window, but I have to do it at scale. So you do that through an API. So I'd send that data through an API to like OpenAI as an example. AI will do its thing on the instructions that I give it. It will send me a response back, which is the content that I would use, or maybe it's a step to get to the content. I would log that into the marketing automation tool. And then that's what you use as personalization tags within content. So here's an example of what that looks like in real life. So one of my clients is Glide. They're a no-code app builder, which means that when you sign up for Glide, you tell Glide what it is you want to build. And there's some pretty standard use cases, which is how I used to personalize content when they came in. A lot of companies will come into Glide wanting to build their custom CRM. Maybe they want to manage their inventory. They're building an event that they want to host. Some pretty typical stuff, and they just want custom software to be able to do it. So I would group people based on keywords into probably like 6 to 8 segments. And then I would send them a template. We had like a template library. And so I would send them a template that could get them started. And this email performed decent. For PLG SaaS with high inbound, and there's decent, amount of low intent, meaning that like people are trying a bunch of tools. The click rate was like right around 2%, just under that. And it worked fine. But I decided to go back and make a comparison of, okay, what was it when they signed up, as you can see here in the screenshot, what was it that they told me that they wanted to build? And then in my gut, like how closely did I match that intent with the template that I sent them in this email? And as I went through just a table of dozens of records, I found I was actually pretty misaligned on my segmentation. So even though I was using keywords, when someone would say portal, and I would give them something that kind of mimicked a CRM or a customer portal, what they were really wanting to do is manage their inventory. And we had a specific template for that. And so I was so far off that I felt like I needed to change some things. And then the other thing was that the misalignment came because people were so nuanced in the specific use case that they had in mind. So grouping people into these buckets actually did a bit of a disservice because it showed that like I was trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, or whatever, if it's the opposite, right?
Yep.
And it just, there's a bit of a feel like when someone comes to you and it's not quite what you really need, it's a bit of a letdown. Might not be surprising, but it's a bit of a letdown because they don't get you. I wanted to get to a point where the brand, you could feel it, that the brand gets you. I built what I just showed you here. With this is where I would take that prompt that they gave us at the beginning of sign up of what they wanted to build. I'd send that over, and then I would have AI do a few things for me. One, I would have it name the app that they want to build. So we'd give it an identity based on the requirements that they wrote in that prompt. Then I played around with a bunch of different options on how we would fill the content. I played around with kind of re-summarizing what they were trying to build and the requirements that would be included in that. And then one other thing I did was, while in the previous world I had 6 to 8 templates groups that I was serving, our template library with like Glide branded templates was 70. And so there was there was a bigger range of potential use cases that we could match up. So what I did with the API called AI was I fed it all of the templates that we had and said, okay, here's the prompt of the user of what they're wanting to build. Based on that, which template out of these 70 templates most closely aligns with the use case of what they're trying to do? And then when AI makes that choice, then at the same time, I would also have it pull down the right image of that template, the right URL of that template, the right name of that template, and all that would feed into this email. And here are the receipts. At a decent scale, the click rates tripled.
Wow.
And it's mind-boggling a little bit to see that big of a jump, because when we're talking about A/B tests within emails, if you get like a 10-15% jump, meaning like you go from 1.2 to 1.3 or 4%, you're happy and you're making progress. This is another world. And I think that's the potential here, and in terms of personalization. And from a nuts and bolts perspective on how this works, There's a huge variety of ways to do it, like workflow tools, a lot of email uh, ESPs right now, they have things within their platform that you can do it. Um, the workflow aspect of this is the biggest cost, particularly if you're not technical. So what I'm going to show you today is an example in a system called Customer IO, and it is an ESP that's really good for PLG SaaS, and they have a webhook step within their campaign builder, which makes it really easy. So you have to learn how to work with APIs a little bit. You have to know what like a sending a post to a URL is and how to format JSON, which by the way, I didn't know how to do. And AI is the one that helped me build all of this.
So did you know anything about APIs before
So I
you?
had done webhooks a
Okay.
little bit before, but like
Okay.
for example, in HubSpot, you can do the same thing with something like custom code blocks, which is a lot more intense. And
Yep.
I've built a similar flow with custom code blocks with, like JavaScripts and stuff that I have no idea what they even mean, but we've gone back and forth, and you can get to a point where you build something legitimate, right? It'll walk you through how to build it. It's pretty straightforward. And when you get errors, you're able to feed the errors back into AI, have explained to you why you messed up. It'll give you something to fix, and then you can go back and test, right? And so learning to be a little more technical is a pretty big breakthrough, because especially if you do have high volume, let's say I was using Zapier to do the same workflow. Well, on a single email, like you just saw, like I personalized 4 or 5 aspects of that email for every contact that comes through. And in Zapier, there would be a step to send off to AI. Well, first to actually load the data in from HubSpot, then to send over to AI, and then to get the response. So for every personalization, there's 3 steps. That uses up your workflow limits really quickly, right? So it's really useful for testing, but I think one of the big hurdles is trying to figure out workarounds. And some programs give you more access than others. But again, when you're looking at cost, the more technical you can be, the better off you're going to be. And by technical, it doesn't mean you have to learn it all, but you do know how to use, you do need to know how to use AI to at least get to a point where you're coding something, so that you can figure out the workarounds. So this is what a webhook would look like, right? You have the
Yep.
URL, you're sending a post job, you've got a couple of headers here with like your API tokens and stuff. You have a JSON payload, which describes the model. It gives instructions for the system, and then the actual prompt as if you were using ChatGPT of what you want it to do. There's a bunch of other parameters that you can put in this job and to kind of manipulate it, but this is a simple version. When image here, and then when it shoots your response back, it gives you a ton of different stuff like the amount of tokens you use and whatever. But the meat is in this uh, uh, choices response here, and you'll learn to like parse this out, where then you store that response into your marketing automation platform, and that's a personalized message. So there's a lot of potential here, and from a technical side, it's new for a lot of people. And once you get past it, the strategic side is actually really difficult, because it's a completely new type of thinking. We're so used to, especially in email, we're literal thinkers. So if your first name is this, then the value in your uh email is going to be that, right? Or if you said like in my segments, you're kind of limited to these singular groups. Nuanced personalization is like a whole new world, including the use cases and how you like even create content like that. And so as I've worked with a few folks on building that, many people say like, well, I'm just going to doing the same thing that I would do with field merges, because it's a new line of thinking. But once you break through and realize what you can do, matching the relevance of what people are actually feeling, not just through enrichment data and stuff, but what they actually want to do with your product, uh, there, there's, it's a massive breakthrough in helping them connect how your product will help them do what they need to do.
Love that. Yeah, I love that. I think this is such a good example of not like hyperbole of AI, but this is like such a good example of how it can actually be used in a practical, everyday way. One question, I actually just a couple quick questions if you're good with
Yeah.
that. First question is, I know you've seen like it's so obvious when you get one of these emails that was clearly written by AI and it uses,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, it's pretty lazy on the marketer's part. I feel like where they're just like, yeah, like grab their website and talk, make sure you talk about these value props or whatever. How did you get kind of past that to where you felt comfortable that what AI was going to return, like maybe from a QA perspective, like was there ever a part of you that was like, crap, I'm about to hand the keys over and like I think it's working pretty well, but was there like a lot of iterations that went into that before you felt confident?
There's a ton of iteration. Two things that come to mind on that. First off, I think there's a greater disappointment when it comes from a person as opposed to a brand, right?
Mm,
So like if I'm trying to fake a relationship that I as a human looked you up and personalized a message and then that falls short, like that's a big letdown. From a brand's perspective though, if the effort's just there that like I was trying to understand who you are and that like what I know is publicly available on the internet couldn't be used, then honestly, brands should be using that. And not enough of that is happening still.
mm,
And sort of mistakes are made, but like I would expect that and want that from brands. So that's the first thing. Second is what you're saying here in terms of iteration is also another, how do I say it? But like it's another reason to be a little more technical because can you imagine the absolute headache it would be for me to go through like an operations person or an engineer to figure out how to tap into like AI at scale and then iterate on the prompts like dozens of times to make sure I'm feel good at them. Like I have to do that all myself. I can't wait for them to fix a prompt, get it back, me analyze it and so forth. Like I gotta move faster. So there is a ton of iteration. And I actually think it's better to, well, you learn how to fix guardrails of what you're going to do, and that takes time. I think it's actually better to start broad and almost like force the system to give you some junk back just so you can see how what its tendencies are and what you have to limit it. So what that also allows you to do is be pretty creative in your thinking and how you're crafting content. And then once you get like, if I'm just trying to write a sentence and the first thing it gives me back is 4 paragraphs, okay, now I know how to like start manipulating it to say like, okay, I only want this, this character count or these kind of words. Or like in my case, one of the guardrails I set up was like, you're
mm.
only choosing from these 70 templates, right? And I'm giving you all of them. You have to make that choice. Those are the kind of guardrails that you'll end up getting to, but usually it's better to get to them by mistakes. You don't have to send them publicly, but make the mistake first and like sending all the iterations, and then you can weed it out.
Yeah, love it. I think that's one of the things I love about AI is I think it's going to expand opportunities for people who might not be super technical. Like I consider myself a technical marketer. And so like for me, I think you're probably the same where you're used to using data, you're already probably needing to leverage and import, different connectors or whatever to be able to run your lifecycle programs the way that you want to run them. And so, but I've talked to a lot of marketers that are really hesitant because they're like, well, I don't know how to work with APIs. And I think that's part of the beauty of AI is not only it's basically like a buddy that you can sit there and interact with and ask questions. And it can also, because I've done this a couple of times where I went through and I built some things and I had no idea what the code was actually doing.
Yeah.
And then I got myself into trouble because I was like, I don't know what's happening. But along the way, what's worked really well for me is asking the AI to explain what the code is doing so that then I can start to learn with it. And that's been super helpful for me. But if you were to give advice to a marketer that's out there listening and they're like, this is overwhelming. I'm not a technical marketer. I don't understand how to code. Where's a good place for them to start? Did they just have to roll up their sleeves and do it? Or how did you start?
It's better to start with a use case of your own than like trying to dream something up, right? So like, and in terms of like, kind of like what I was saying at the beginning is like I was wanting to drive something that was like big impact. I was sick of tests that weren't doing anything. Like every test that I do that is not statistically significant is pretty, not entirely, but pretty much a waste of my time. And I'm expected to do more than that. I'm done. I don't want those kind of tests. And so if there's something that, wish you could do that you haven't been able to do before, write that down. Is that something that you can go at? Personalizing at scale through hundreds of thousands of contacts is something I was never able to do before. I'm able to do it now. And you might not know how to do it, but then that's the work that you put in to try and figure it out.
Love that. Love it. Love it. That's awesome, man. Where can people find out more about you? So if they want to track you down and they need some help with their email and they want to see the results that you've just shared, like how do they get in contact with you? Where can they find you?
Yeah. So I'm active on LinkedIn. I'm very busy there. So find me on LinkedIn. And then my website for my contracting stuff and fractional is boostmyemail.com.
Awesome. Michael, thanks again for jumping on the show, man. I appreciate it. Super
Yeah.
helpful
Thanks for having
insights.
me. For sure.
Thanks a lot.